it feels a little bit like the visions you have for this. I mean, does it just come to you? Like, how do you know? Like, if there's somebody listening and it's like, there's that saying of like everybody thinks they have a book in them or whatever, but not everybody does. It's like there's probably lots of people who are like, oh, I wish I could tell my story. Like, how do you know when it's right, whether it be your own story or even when I know that you've produced or helped with a lot of other ones. How do you know if it's the right approach, the right kind of story to tell?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's multiple factors, and each person will take this like in a unique way. Back when I was helping and supporting other people's work, it was really for me like, does this feel aligned? Like, does the right creator seem like they're making the right story with the right intention? I think intention is huge. And on top of that, are they using a medium that really leverages this idea, right? So a great example would be for On the Morning You Wake, which was a seminal piece of VR made by Archer's Mark, who made Notes on Blindness and Atlas V. And it's a project that really highlights nuclear weapons threat. It's 3 chapters. And I said, these creators are renowned documentary creators. Games for Change is a really great nonprofit. This VR experience is very impressive just from a technological standpoint. But the reality also is nuclear weapons threat hasn't been a part of the conversation for the public eye in a very long time. And a VR project about something like this could really make an impact at very specific levels, whether that's at the public level, the university level, the policy level, the activism level. And I say this all feels right, and I feel like I'm the right person to like help execute this impact campaign. I feel like I'm the right person who can really help create these best practices around how you get VR out into the world. And so that felt very aligned to me. The creators, the the subject matter material, the medium, all felt very aligned. I think one thing to also keep in mind is if it feels like you're forcing something, then it's probably not the right time. That doesn't mean it's not the right thing, but it might not just be the right time. A great example of this would be my sister and I are very inspired by Percy Jackson and The Lightning Thief, which is a great series by Rick Riordan, which retells mythology and fairy tales. And I remember being early 20s, my sister is probably in her junior high school years, and we were like, let's write a book that retells mythology from a Percy Jackson point of view and see if Rick Riordan will publish it, right? And we had this idea for this retelling of this mythology book. And at the beginning, there was a lot of energy, there was a lot of focus. We were really excited. We did like 2 or 3 chapters, and then it just felt like we were forcing it. Like we couldn't find time to meet. She got really busy with her high school stuff. I got really busy with my work stuff. And we just decided, you know what, maybe it's just not the right time, and that's okay. Cut to 3 years later, I'm making a VR animation series that's retelling mythologies and fairy tales and folk tales. So and that was a totally different medium. It's not even a novel. It's not a young adult novel. It's a VR animated experience. So that's not to say you don't have a great idea. That's not to say your story's not right. Like my father's mentee and I had talked about doing a documentary about my dad. We had talked about doing a skateboard filmmaking foundation that like funded young filmmakers. Like we had come up with all these ideas, but none of them felt like they stuck. None of them felt like they had momentum. None of them felt like the right time either in our lives or in the life of like the years that had passed since my father's death. But suddenly we came up with this idea with the Museum of the Moving Image, and it just took off. It just like had all this energy, it had all this like excitement, and it had all this momentum. And so sometimes I think it's not about the right idea, it's about the right time. And it's also about making sure, whoever you're collaborating with or whoever you're bringing in to be a part of your team, you have to make sure those are the right people. Because one thing I cannot take credit for is the success of everything I've done isn't just because of me and maybe my visionary viewpoint of the world. It's also because I work with some of the most amazing, incredible people that I trust. They trust me. We have a really great working relationship. We have really great communication. Sometimes certain people are right for certain projects. Sometimes other people are right for certain projects. So the best thing you can do to set yourself up for success, I think, and I know I've been talking for a while, is actually really taking that time and energy to invest in the right people around you so that when you need that team, when you need that community, for example, with the Museum of the Moving Image, when you need to make that ask, people are ready to hear it and they're excited to hear it and they're receptive to it.
Right. But I love that. I mean, you always are like, it's not just me, it's not just me. And then that's part of the reason I think that I love that you're telling your own stories now. Like there's a little bit of like finally. Like, there's a little bit of like, you can't deflect some of the credit here, Mikhail. Like these are your stories that like resonate deeply within you. And that's why I keep saying the word visionary, because it is your vision. There is so much that is your vision and your ability to sort of bring people together, but in a just kind of a wonderful way. So how are you gonna, I mean, is there a way that it just kind of feels right? If it's like the next story that you tell, if you're working on something, is it that it just is like, I have to tell this, or I need to tell this, or is it that you have to make a change? Like there needs to be this social change. Like what kind of drives you, or is it both?
Yeah, I think honestly, if you had asked me this question 2 years ago, I would have said, "Oh, social change drives me." But now that I have been through the social impact field a few times, I see that you can make as much change as you want from the aspect of I'm gonna make social change, but it'll ultimately lead to burnout because it can be very intense, it can be very thankless, it can also feel like you're pushing a boulder up a mountain. And so if you don't have that core part of yourself that's saying, I'm also doing this because I love doing it, or I'm also do this because I love this passion or this topic, or it interests me, or I'm curious about it, or there's something about it that just gives me so much fulfillment and energy, it you can't do it just for specifically making social change, right? This is what I have found. So, in the sense that I want to make social change with the subjects and the matters I care about, I can't say that there's everything I'm the best person for. Like, I do think there's certain things I'm just not as interested in. One, for example, honestly, is climate change. Like, people love talking about climate change. They're so passionate about climate change. I'm just not one of those people. So, if someone were to approach me and be like, hey, Michaela, we want to do this project about climate change, would you want to direct it? I might look at them and say, I could direct something like this, but I'm not the subject matter expert in this. And there might be somebody who I know who loves climate change who would actually be a really great person to work with me on this. Like, I wouldn't say yes to something just because on paper it sounds aligned with my brand. The other thing I think that really drives me now is the amount of creative I get to do on it. You know, for so long I was people's co-producers, co-creators, co-directors, and as much as I love collaboration, there is that part of me that you said that really wants to step out and be this like creative director voice and be this in this director role and own this ability I have that's really fun and I enjoy doing it. I love working with teams of people and be able to continue to hone that skill. So now a lot of what I want to say yes to or a lot of things I'm looking at are original ideas I'm pitching that have all these things in common. They are highlighting themes and topics I'm really interested in. They're inspired by things I loved watching growing up. They're inspired by characters I wish I had seen growing up or characters I wish I could be. You know, they're inspired by my role being an oldest sibling. They're inspired by growing up in many different environments, whether that's like rural California or New York City. So it really is now about kind of taking all these things I've done in my life and starting to make fun, exciting new opportunities happen for myself. That really drives me forward. I don't want to ever be stagnant or I don't ever want to rest on my laurels or rest on my awards or rest on my previous projects.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, to me now, it's basically like, oh, that's a Michaela production. Oh, I want to see it. Like, it's like you're giving me
Oh,
a brand name and all this.